You're listening to Cattywampus.
Steve, you like Jean-Claude Van Damme? Or did?
I would say that I thoroughly enjoyed him as a kid. Like I enjoyed most things as a kid. It was because my father really enjoyed those action movies when I was a kid. But that fell into the category of we would watch anything with Schwarzenegger, anything with Seagal, anything with Stallone, anything with Van Damme, anything that was an action film. It was probably on my TV at some point.
So he was the star in all three of those movies.
Yes, the Belgian man.
Today I learned. I'd never heard of him before.
Never heard of Jean-Claude?
Never heard of him, never seen him. This is my first experience.
I knew who he was, but other than Street Fighter, I had never seen a movie starring Jean-Claude Van Damme from the 80s or 90s. And today we watched Bloodsport, Hard Target, and Time Cop, which were curated by Steve, who believed that this was the best representation of Jean-Claude Van Damme. I believe that's true.
And I still believe that.
I think that's true. All three had a unique flavor in that one of them didn't utilize him as a martial arts star at all.
Yeah, I mean, they all came across and showed different strengths and weaknesses to both him and the menagerie of cast, crew, and directors that have chosen to work with him in the past.
The poor man Schwarzenegger doesn't even begin to cover it. It feels like the DC movies to the Jean-Claude Van Damme is to Arnold Schwarzenegger what the DC movies are to the Marvel movies. Where you're like, you don't get it. You think you could do the same thing.
That's a fair comparison.
And it's rough. He is clearly very talented. Like not as an actor, as an athlete. So many roundhouse kicks, although not many. You think I think there's a version of these movies where I'm like, if he could just do 50 roundhouse kicks, if it were more of the Jackie Chan style of movie, I'd be really on board with how entertaining that would be. I'd never been exposed to these movies. I'd always seen them at the store, and I was like, he's not Schwarzenegger, and I've never seen Seagal or any. I can't imagine the Seagal movies are a tier down from even these. Is probably what it feels like.
You might be mistaken.
Really? They're better than this.
The Seagal movies are different.
They're different? Okay.
Seagal doesn't feel like Seagal isn't as athletic by any stretch of the imagination.
No, he does seem like a man who lets the fight come to him.
He's not as athletic. I feel like most of his films involve him just snapping people's necks. Like, that's his go-to martial arts move.
Is it even a martial arts move?
Yeah, right? It's got to be.
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know.
One presumes.
And frankly, I don't know enough about martial arts to refute that. So I'm not going to be the guy that tells you, no, neck snapping is clearly barbaric. I mean, that has no place in the martial sciences.
That martial science is that specific to Bloodsport? I had
never heard that anywhere but Bloodsport.
In Bloodsport, which is essentially Enter the Dragon, but legally sanctioned by many countries, apparently. They keep calling it the martial sciences, which is an interesting tactic. The villain neck snapped a bunch of people. He seemed to know martial arts. I don't think it's a separate move from martial arts, right? It's not like I learned martial arts and then someone else taught me to neck snap, or maybe
he just does that to end his fights quickly.
He did. Well, he did to prove his strength and power. He was an interesting villain.
I mean, a fatality is the way that you end most Mortal Kombat matches. So
yeah, but I don't remember.
So clearly my knowledge of martial arts begins and ends with Mortal Kombat.
But
I did not see one spine get ripped out of a single combatant in Bloodsport. Therefore, I'm going to go ahead and give it a 3 out of 10.
No, Bloodsport's like the docudrama version of Mortal Kombat. No, it was weird because the villain wasn't really the villain, and he just kind of started to cheer a lot. He would win and then be super psyched that he won, which is an interesting take for a villain. Bloodsport is a weird movie, and it's really all over the map, and it kind of reminds me of the movies that Brandon Lee was in before The Crow, in the sense that you're like, oh, The Crow is going to be your big break, where you're in a real movie now. But I don't think that ever happened to Jean-Claude Van Damme.
That never really happened. I think the closest that was, I almost want to say Time Cop was supposed to be that. Either Time Cop or Street Fighter. I would 100% believe that Street Fighter was supposed to be the vehicle that makes him a megastar.
I didn't even know they made that to a movie.
You didn't know Street Fighter was made into a movie?
I knew about the Mortal Kombat.
They did
movies.
it twice, man. Not with Jean-Claude Van Damme, but there's one from the 90s, and then there's another one called Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li, starring Kristen Kreuk from Smallville fame.
How did I miss
and
these?
A sex cult of some kind.
Chun-Li was in the sex cult? Chun-Li herself?
I believe.
What about Blanca?
I would assume he was the one running the sex cult.
That guy does kind of look like Blanca. From like the Street Fighter 1 movie.
Yes.
Like, he kind of looks like that guy who goes into the machine. Yeah.
Charlie.
So anyway, there's a whole massive Street Fighter movie, Corey, that we didn't elect to watch, mostly because it's kind of established already as like a cult classic. And these don't seem to have a huge cult following.
Right. You don't see these brought up.
Yeah, these movies have kind of been forgotten, but these were particularly Bloodsport. These were like relatively successful movies that obviously like spearheaded this guy's career, and I do find it fascinating that there was an appetite for this, because I didn't find the action particularly compelling in any of them. Bloodsport was fun, but like, no joke, like half of the fights are out of focus.
Yeah, no, I'll give you that. They're for
like,
sure.
Or the camera just doesn't catch them. Like they leave the space of the frame, and the camera's like, yeah, they'll come back.
You can also clearly see they're holding their punches or holding their kicks. You know, they're not supposed to actually be kicking or punching each other, but it's really obvious that the people on screen are not physically touching each other, and they're just
there was definitely a level of WWE to some of those fight scenes.
It was heinous. It ruined any sort of action enjoyment I would have had from that movie, because almost every contact, with the exception of a few close-ups, you can tell that like they didn't really contact. You know, wait half a second, and then the actor reacts as if they actually had been punched or kicked. It was like, oh, okay, maybe it was just this one shot, but the whole fight sequence, it's this way.
Well, it's like this weird thing where they're all in slow motion, and this happens in Hard Target too, because John Woo directed it, and boy,
half of that movie was in slow motion. Had
Yeah.
that movie not had slow motion in it, it would have been 45 minutes long.
I know, right? No wonder so much was cut out of it. But like, slow motion doesn't really add to the drama of a physical fight, because you're taking an action that should be quick and impactful and brutal, and you're slowing it down to a balletic thing, on top of the fact that you're already shooting something where you're reenacting it and not doing it for real. So it doesn't, it sells the lack of impact. It's like selling you the falseness of it, because like one of the things about like choreography in other action movies is they try and hide the fact that they're not being hit. These movies seem to revel in these long slow motion shots of people just not being hit. And I was thinking about it when I was like, do Schwarzenegger movies do this? Because they don't do a lot of hand-to-hand fighting in Schwarzenegger movies. I guess that's how they get around it. It's mostly like gunplay or prop play. He throws a steam pipe into a man and tells him to lay off some steam.
Yeah. When you really think about it, I don't know of too many films outside of the martial arts community that really revel in this idea of we've got to get as close to each other as possible in order to simulate contact, at least in the late 80s, early 90s style of cinema. Or at least for that particular genre of action film.
Well, it's interesting because unlike Schwarzenegger and Stallone, this guy is a martial artist. Stallone and Schwarzenegger are famous for how in shape they are. And Jean-Claude Van Damme is famous for, I actually am a martial artist. Like, I can actually roundhouse kick you and do the splits. A tactical move, proven successful.
In every single film.
Wait, did it happen in Hard Target? Did he do the splits in Hard Target?
I think he did it in Hard Target. He didn't do it in Time Cop, though.
He
did. Oh, he did do it in Time Cop. He jumped up on the kitchen island.
After a dude shot his taser into the pool of water.
Okay, so he did it once.
Yeah.
But compared to...
Yeah, but it was great.
Of all the ones he's done, that was probably the best one.
I feel like in Bloodsport, he did it almost every single fight.
Oh my god, it was like, can you believe he can roundhouse kick and do the splits? This is like, they just returned to it again and again and again. They used the flashback footage of him doing it again and again and again. They loved it. They thought it was going to be the coolest thing in the world. It was like a kid who had just learned a curse word.
I mean, it was a seminal moment for the film. It showed his...
It's a seminal moment.
Yeah, it I don't know. I'm trying real hard to defend it
You
at
don't
this
have to defend
point.
it. Here's the thing. I actually Didn't hate these. I think the biggest problem with them is that they take themselves very seriously. They don't have that sense of fun and charm that even the bad Schwarzenegger movies do. Like Schwarzenegger, one is a better actor than Jean-Claude Van Damme, and so he could deliver these charming one-liners. And like you feel like there's so many Schwarzenegger movies where he looks just off camera, as if he's looking at the audience. He's not looking at the camera, but he's looking just off camera, and he gives this wink and this smile of like, yeah, this is gonna be fun. Come on, like just go along. It'll be really fun. But Hard Target turns out to be a treatise about the homeless problem.
Yeah, which really caught me off guard because it's been so long since I had watched that movie. And I mean, it definitely went out of its way to try to pinpoint a problem, at least in the first...
It was police striking, Stephen. That was the problem.
Pretty much. I don't know. The first half of that film felt like it was trying really hard to tell you something meaningful. It accomplished nothing because you had a Belgian man trying to play...
He was Creole, Stephen.
A
Born
Belgian
and raised
Creole.
in New Orleans.
Yeah, it didn't...
Raised by his Creole uncle, Wilford Brimley.
Super Brimley-o brother.
Yes, dressed like Super Mario, which was excellent. Hard Target got way better as it went on.
From about the midpoint on, when it was just all John Woo action all the time, and it stopped trying to take itself seriously, it became an infinitely more watchable film. The beginning, where it was Jean-Claude Van Damme trying to carry a noir story.
It's a noir story based on the documentary Dark Days about the homeless. These movies aren't as fun as they should be, especially for what they're about. Like, Time Cop is a movie about a time cop who stops time crimes, and it takes itself real seriously. Were there any jokes? Like, did Van Damme crack any jokes in Time Cop?
I don't recall any.
To the extent of he shot somebody in the crotch and then said, "That's gotta hurt."
Yeah, that's
Stellar.
So no.
It's a crappy one-liner.
It's not even a one-liner. It's like anything you would have done to him, you could have said that. Even the worst Schwarzenegger, like he shoots an alligator and goes, "Your luggage," and you're like, right, because that's specific to an alligator.
Right.
Chill out.
Chill out. Yeah. Well, Mr. Freeze is
that's a whole different conversation, because Batman and Robin was literally nothing but one-liners.
Ice to see you.
What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age.
That's a reach. Because that's, like, not even relevant to what he does. I believe something crashes through a window. He doesn't freeze shit when he does that. He doesn't freeze a goddamn thing. He goes, what killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age, and I'm pretty sure a rocket ship crashes through the roof. Like, I'm trying to imagine, like if I were 10, if I'd be super into this. And I'm thinking I might have been into Hard Target a bit. The action just escalates. Because at first you're like, this is going to be, I guess, kind of a realistic, like, crime movie. And then he, like, roundhouse kicks somebody off of a motorcycle bike. And you're like, oh, that's a little bit above reality. And then 50,000 men appear with guns hanging out of things. And you're like, oh, my God, the cop died. And then he's like, takes him on a chase. And then he's on the motorcycle. And then he's standing on a motorcycle for, like, minutes at a time, firing. And then he jumps over a car and screams, yeah, like Aquaman. Do you think those will ever come back? Do you think, like, we'll ever get nostalgic for this?
No, unfortunately I don't. I don't ever see a time where people are just going to be like, you know what I really want to do? I want to have a bad Jean-Claude Van Damme weekend where I just sit down and watch.
I mean, we just did.
In the interest of science.
That's true.
Yeah, no, I don't see these holding nostalgia. The problem is that these were made, I hate to say it like this, but in a simpler time.
It's a simpler time in America and Hong Kong.
People wanted less out of films. They apparently did, or else Jean-Claude Van Damme would not have had a career that went even an nth as long as it did.
The bar was impossibly low. I mean, we were talking about it, like, I've laughed now when I hear people, like, talk about, like, how Zack Snyder and Rian Johnson have ruined things. And I'm like, at least those movies were movies.
I guess that's just the way of it is, I mean, you look at cinema over the last 100 years and how it's evolved. It's gone from, jilted, I say my line, now you say your line.
Oh, the mid-Atlantic, the transatlantic accent.
Yeah, the transatlantic accent to, we're actually anchoring ourselves to a character. We're trying to tell a story, a narrative. There's an idea here. We're going somewhere with it. And then I guess in the 80s, everybody was on, blow flowed like water. And
Jacques Van Damme can tell you about that.
yes, that's true. And, it was
You
a
could
lot easier to get crap made, apparently.
You could see the cocaine addiction on his face in Hard Target.
Yes, you could. It was particularly bad.
Who was it who pointed out? Somebody pointed out that, like, Time Cop looks like it was shot 10 years before Hard Target. Hard Target was some rough times for Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Oh, no, 10 years after.
Oh, 10 years after?
Yeah,
Is that what it was?
The movie looked like, when I first saw it, the first 5 minutes, I thought this movie had been shot 10 years after Hard Target.
Oh,
Imagine
no.
my surprise when I find out it's actually relatively close on the timeline.
Yeah, they came out like a year apart.
Yeah, that was mind-blowing.
I like the idea of them. I gotta say, like, after this, you may have not converted me. They're kind of quaint.
Yeah,
I
think that's the best way to describe them. Actually,
I know when you're like into simpler times, like film has always, in all art forms do this. They get more sophisticated as time goes on,
right?
And so it's just a level of sophistication, and there's definitely like exceptions to that, where there's definitely better action scenes before Bloodsport.
All right.
But overall, people were like, yeah, this is fine. We don't really know what this is supposed to look like, because he's really the first. That's the other thing, too. Is since Bruce Lee, had there been another martial arts star in America? Because Jackie Chan didn't break into the American box office until the late 90s. And then didn't start starring in American movies until the late 90s. Like, Rush Hour is his first, like, American film, right?
Wasn't that 98?
That's 98, yeah. Well after the Jean-Claude Van Damme era has ended, really. Like, so it's tricky. Like, I was like, I guess he was the only guy, right? Like, Bruce Lee had died in the 70s, and it was him.
I mean, he wasn't the only guy. He was the only one that somehow had made it work. I mean, I guess to a degree you can say Steven Seagal did, and then there were a few other odds and ends actors out there. Don't ask me to tell you the names of any of the actors from the American Ninja franchise. But...
Chuck Norris, I guess.
Oh, yeah, Chuck Norris.
Did he do martial arts? I've never, again, preview of a possible future episode where you have to sell me on Chuck Norris. I've never seen a Chuck Norris movie.
You're going to have to find somebody else to sell you on Chuck Norris.
But
that's a hard pass.
From the good, well, then we don't have to do it because it doesn't look that interesting.
We can just watch 8 hours of Bowflex infomercials.
I would rather watch 6 more Jean-Claude Van Damme movies than watch 3 Chuck Norris movies.
We'll just watch every season of Walker, Texas Ranger.
Oh, now actually I might be interested in watching some Walker, Texas Ranger because that looks so. But yeah, I guess he was doing martial arts. It wasn't just him with like the American Ninja series. It wasn't just him with a gun, right? It was him like the Delta Force movies are like him with a gun.
Yes, that was him with a gun, but it was also martial arts where he was. I mean,
America's greatest hero, man with a gun.
You want to say that Jean-Claude Van Damme roundhouse kicks too much?
Does Chuck Norris' signature move a roundhouse?
Yes,
that's his signature move.
Do you think he's pissed at Jean-Claude Van Damme?
I don't know, but right now I really miss Celebrity Deathmatch because I feel like they could answer that question for us.
It had to have done that, right?
I don't know.
Jean-Claude Van Damme versus Chuck Norris.
If they didn't, then I have some serious questions for everyone at MTV. Not that I didn't already have serious questions for everyone at MTV.
I could be misremembering, but didn't Celebrity Deathmatch do Sylvester Stallone and Jean-Claude Van Damme because the joke was you can't understand either of them?
That's entirely possible.
You
might be right,
and it's really true.
We'll do research later on this.
That wasn't just me. I had a really hard time hearing this guy's lines.
Oh no, he's incomprehensible. There were many times I thought he said one thing, and it turned out, based on what happened in the movie, he clearly said the exact opposite of what I thought he said. Like the particularly Hard Target, which makes him a detective-esque character in a noir setting for the first half, which means he does a lot of talking, and it's a real problem because important to the plot, such as it is, important information is coming from him, and you have no fucking idea what he just said. And then they cut to the villains, and they do this a bunch. I thought one of the biggest similarities between Hard Target and Time Cop was both movies had a set of villains in one set, often explaining what they were going to go about to do, and it feels like reshoots. It feels like they went, this movie's impossible to follow, get one set for a day, we'll shoot 3 or 4 scenes with the villains explaining their plan and what we'll do in the next scene so that you are not confused. Because unfortunately, it seems like they relied on Jean-Claude Van Damme to explain it to the audience, and that is nonsense. He can't speak.
clearly his English wasn't wonderful, but again, I feel like the cocaine didn't help. So,
well, one of the advantages of Street Fighter is he doesn't talk a lot because he's like one of 87 characters, so everybody's got like 3 minutes of screen time. But he does have that amazing speech.
He
about
does have
how
that
he's
great
not going
speech.
home.
Who's coming with me?
We can go home.
I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but for the most part,
He's
I can
more
understand.
understandable in Street Fighter, right?
Yes.
Maybe it is the cocaine because that was the height of the cocaine. Maybe he needs cocaine. This is like when I discovered with Sylvester Stallone. Do you remember how the PlayStation 3 could do just very easily without programming the 1.5 fast forward and it still played the audio? So I was watching Rocky 2 and I was like bored to shit because I don't like Rocky 2. I was like, I don't like this movie. It actually might be my least favorite Rocky. I know there are worse Rocky movies, but I think Rocky 2 is the one I would want to watch the least. And I just hit 1.5 as he was talking. He became completely comprehensible. It sounded like he was speaking like a normal human being.
So when you play back his voice
At
1.5
1.5
times
speed, he sounds completely normal and comprehensible.
Why?
The sentences strung together perfectly. So we started skipping other parts of the movie where we knew he talked, like previous scenes. We were like, let's do it again. And it worked. Like every time we were like, what the fuck? This is amazing.
If I ever watch this guy again, I'm going to watch their movies. 1.5
I
times
really would
speed.
like
Where were you for literally every Expendables film?
I know. Oh, God. I've only ever seen this. See, that's a good example of something. I only ever saw the second of those. And is Jean-Claude Van Damme in that one?
Second or third. I know he's in one of them.
I saw the second one, and I honestly don't remember. That's the one where Chuck Norris does show up for one scene, and they do Chuck Norris jokes.
Yes.
In their movie.
That's a perfect utilization of Chuck Norris.
It reminded me of in X-Men The Last Stand where the Juggernaut said, I'm the Juggernaut, bitch, and people in the audience booed.
Yeah.
That's funny, because my audience, they all cheered, yeah.
I was in an audience that, I remember specifically, I was in San Francisco when I saw it, and I was in the X-Men The Last Stand audience, and I had an audience that turned on the film real quick. Justifiably so, it's a terrible film.
Yes.
But you could just feel it. We were all in the theater like, God, it's like this. Like it was that angel scene where they did 2 flashbacks in a row. They did the Gene flashback.
Yep.
And then they immediately cut to an angel flashback, and he goes, "Oh God, my son, not you, a mutant." And it went to credits, and you could just feel the whole audience go, "Oh no." Like, ugh, it's gonna be like that, and there's like 2 hours of this, or 2.5 hours of this. Oh no! Like you just knew it was such a, and it was one of those things where that Juggernaut line, that's when the audience turned. And I remember when they did it's not a post-credit sequence, but it's like right before the credits where Magneto almost moves the chess piece, and it moves. People groaned. Anyway, Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah.
Jcvd, which isn't actually shorter because it's the same amount of syllables. So.
Yeah, I don't know.
The muscles from Brussels.
It's Van Damme.
See, that's better.
His name is Van Damme.
Van Damme.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I'm just going to call him Van Damme.
Do we know, is that his legal name?
It's not. His name was Jean-Claude Camille Francois Van Verenberg.
Oh, well, Van Damme was the wiser choice here.
It's like Schwarzenegger. I mean, he talked about that where he was like, yeah, nobody, people were like, oh, you're never going to hire me and all this stuff. And now it's like as a kid, I learned how to spell that name specifically.
Right.
I worked on it. I was like, I will learn how to I will memorize how to spell his name correctly.
I don't think I ever put that much effort into
Well, it was
that.
always on the VHS boxes. So there was like these VHS boxes, and it was because it was so long. It was on the side of it, and it took the whole box.
Took
It
up
would
the
take
whole
the whole
box.
box, yep.
This is my childhood. Instead of watching Van Damme movies, I was watching Last Action Hero on repeat going, why doesn't this work?
It's a good satire. I'll give it that.
Well, it's one of those Shane Black scripts, which kind of like bounced around a lot, and we could feel that with Hard Target. Hard Target's not Shane Black, but it feels very much like it's supposed to be a Shane Black movie, specifically when the detectives are on strike, and the one good detective is working on her birthday, and she has a cake of sorts with a candle.
Yeah, it looked like a honey bun with a candle in it.
Yeah, one candle, and she was about to sing "Happy Birthday," and then Jean-Claude Van Damme appeared like a teleporting vampire in front of her, and she put the cake with the candle still lit in her drawer, her desk drawer, and closed it shut, only to find it later that her desk drawer was covered in smoke.
I'm really glad they addressed that.
I'm
really happy that at least had a satisfying conclusion, because I was really worried that they were just going to have her put it in the drawer and then we would never see it again.
It's a weird
But
choice.
at least they opened the desk drawer to show, oh, real world physics do in fact apply here.
Well, that's what makes it even weirder. Like because it's not like because like Lethal Weapon is like famous for these gimmicks. Like they go to the bullpen. Like it's like that kind of business
right.
for background characters, and that's what this feels like. But John Woo just doesn't know what it like. John Woo's a weird choice for that script because John Woo makes incredibly operatic crime dramas with intense gunplay, and so that his first American movie is a modern, is it like a neo-noir Most Dangerous Game riff with a lot of Frank Miller injected into it, starring an English as a second language martial artist. Honestly, when I say it out loud, it's a miracle it turned out as entertaining as it did. When I say it out loud, actually, the movie's pretty good for
I'm genuinely wondering how much of the casting or anything else was actually his idea.
It probably was. I mean, it probably was like I'm sure it was. I mean, it had to be a for hire job. He didn't like shepherd that script. It was a script, and he wanted to break into Hollywood,
Right.
And Jean-Claude Van Damme was an up and coming action star, but what Jean-Claude Van Damme does and what Chow Yun-Fat does is very different. In that one can act, and Jean-Claude Van Damme cannot.
Yep, he was a great Master Roshi in Dragon Ball Evolution.
Crouching, or you could go on Crouching Tiger,
I mean, I could. I didn't.
You've seen the Dragon Ball film?
I've seen parts of it.
You haven't seen the whole film?
I couldn't bring myself to do it, no.
Have you seen the Dragon Ball film, Corey?
No.
Do you know Dragon Ball?
I'm familiar with it, but
Yeah.
I've never consistently watched it.
Same here. I've never consistently watched it or read it. I have people in my life who know a lot about it and love it. But I did see the Dragon Ball film in theaters with somebody who was way into Dragon Ball, and I was like, well, this must be what it's like when you go to meet with a comic book movie, because he was not okay for days. And I can imagine, because it wasn't good, so forget the fact of what it was adapted from. On its own, it was just awful. It actually kind of feels like, to take like the Van Damme thing, it feels like one of those straight-to-video Van Damme movies that he made in like the 2000s.
Yeah.
Which are often also weirdly period pieces. Although we found out that Bloodsport was based on a true story.
Yeah.
The movie tells you that at the end.
That was the biggest plot twist of the evening, and it came pretty early.
Wasn't it?
But at the
Yeah,
end of
that
the movie,
really messed with me a little bit. I had not recalled that was actually based on an individual that had actually fought at this tournament, which apparently actually does exist.
An individual who claims to have done that. I'd like to point out that Wikipedia specifies.
I feel like the movie would have been more enjoyable if they had mentioned all of that a little earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Like in the beginning credit sequence.
I wish every 10 minutes the movie had stopped to remind you that this was a true story.
I mean, that change alone could have made it to cult classic status, but it kind of teeter-tottered on the edge. I don't know. That was the one I liked the least, I think.
Bloodsport?
Bloodsport.
Then I'm curious which one you liked the most.
I didn't.
Okay.
No.
I honestly did not enjoy.
Hey,
any
Corey,
of
which
those
one did you
movies.
like the most? No.
For sure, the least is Bloodsport.
My smoke breaks in between the films. Boy, that's a good question. So we'll pause. Steve, from 1, 2, 3 order, best to worst of the 3 we watched, what?
Of the 3 we watched, best or worst.
And you've seen all these before.
Yeah, I've seen all these before.
I'm curious what you would have rated them before when you were younger, and what you rate them today.
As a kid, what were your favorites?
Hard Target was probably my favorite as a kid.
That makes sense. It's probably got the most going on.
Right. It had the action feels like it flowed the best once you got into it.
Oh yeah, that last hour is great.
Yeah, it's very entertaining.
Yeah, it gets out of hand quick.
Time Cop as a kid, I don't think I ever enjoyed because
It's a surprisingly talky film.
yeah, it's
For a movie
there's
about
a
a
lot.
time cop
Yeah,
with
there's
a
a
gun.
lot. There's a lot of exposition of a film about a man that travels through time on a rocket sled to fight time crime. I expect better of this. I mean, honestly, if I had to pick, I probably would say Hard Target was definitely the top, followed by Bloodsport, and then Time Cop.
And would that be the same today?
Yeah, no, I don't think that really changed today at all.
Well, I'll tell you right now, the kid in me is out today because the Hard Target was definitely my favorite. Despite how boring the first however long it is, from when that cop gets shot to the end of the movie, I was having a real good time.
Yeah.
It's a non-stop thrill ride. It really is what those VHS boxes promised.
If you cut that first, it's almost, I think it's over half the first movie. It's mostly just like a noir style who done
it's
it?
a
Where'd he
bloated
go?
Act 1. It's an Act 1, but it's longer than it should be for
Act 1 is
1.
as long as Acts 1 and 2, and then Act
Yeah.
3 is action.
But
If
it's
that-
great.
if that-
There's like no Act 2 to this movie. There's like Act 1, and then pretty much from the cop gets shit on is just a really long, crazy Act 3.
Right. Well, if they could cut that down by maybe half,
Well,
I would
what's-
have enjoyed it a lot more.
What I think is the most interesting about about Hard Target, and it has an Act 1 and an Act 3, is the fact that there's really no clear distinction between Act 1 and Act 3.
That's true of all the movies.
Yeah, it really just kind of, all of a sudden, that guy gets shot in the car, and the heroes just show up. It doesn't seem like there's any kind of a lag time between the time the guy is shot and the time that police car just shows up.
I mean, it's like the same time of day when the car pulls up with the whole crew in it, right?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a clear
Basically,
demarcation between
once the
those.
movie gets to that, it's basically a lawn afternoon.
Well, right.
It's just one lawn afternoon.
Yeah, because it ends at night, right?
Well, yeah,
Yes, it's dusk.
So it's almost
yeah, because
real-time
I mean,
fighting.
really, I guess Act 3, if we're just gonna call it Act 3, starts with them finding guy's dead body on the street after he gets shot a million times in the middle of a busy New
guess
Orleans
so, yeah.
street corner
The movies, it's the kind of movie
during
that,
this clandestine hunt.
it's the kind of movie. God, that's so true. The movie kind of mistakes set pieces for acts. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like it's like, wow, this is set piece 3, which I guess means it's Act 3.
We've changed location, therefore the movie
Therefore, the
is
story has
almost over.
progressed.
We will start in New Orleans. Look, now we are in the bayou. We are clearly ahead in the film.
Movies move forward.
Of a lot of these older action films, that when you get to the really dark, confined, haphazard, trap-filled warehouse, you're near the end. It's
Oh, yeah.
dark. There's
Well, I mean,
all
that's
sorts
true of even the
apparatuses to
early
hide
James Bond
behind.
films. Look, we found his lair.
Yeah, it's like Terminator 2 is like the really good example of like a good version of this. It's like you get to that steelworks and you're like, oh, okay, so we're getting to the end, and obviously that movie's correctly paced and well made and well acted. But like it's something that all action movies of this year are kind of, whether they're good or not, follow this pattern of okay, well, we were out in the open. Or we start in a city, then we're out in the open. Now we got to go to the steelworks. We got to go to the steelworks. I blame James Cameron.
And what's where the
Yes.
industrial zone? That's how.
Yeah,
we
there
all
has
know as
to
the
be an
audience.
industrial,
This
but
is the
that's-
end. This
and
is
Terminator
the end.
2 did the same, or Terminator
Actually-
1 did the same thing too.
Now that I think
That's
about
right.
it, is there an action film that doesn't end that way from the 80s or 90s?
No, because he goes underground in Command
Yes.
of the Steelworks on a desert island.
I have a valid point, right?
Like
So-
Stallone's movie Cobra ends in Steelworks the same
Oh,
way.
right. And in Time Cop, about halfway through the film, they show up at
that
at
movie
the-
tricks you. You're at the Steelworks and you're like, surprised we're going back to the house from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I'm like, great. 2 locations in this whole. There's 3
You're there
locations
for half
in
an
the-
hour.
I still have serious questions. They were printing circuit boards, but there was not a clean room environment for that.
Maybe they were
film.
already printed. Well, because okay,
That's
whoa.
still not
No, 'cause you can
safe.
see an apparatus.
No, didn't he say that he'd invented some kind of cold fusion way of making circuit boards? That was like the premise. Obviously, they really like
That's
hand
still-
wave the
yeah.
science, but like,
You still need to isolate it.
but maybe well, Devil's Advocate.
Oh, this
Another
is-
90s film that ends in the steelworks. No, it doesn't. I have no idea. I've never stayed awake to finish Devil's Advocate.
The sleeping's the better decision.
I
there.
read on Wikipedia that it's all a dream, apparently, which I was like, great, waste of time. What he said is it wasn't, what did he didn't use the word subatomic. He used a word to describe the board. Then they went to the place where the boards were made, and he talked about cold, like they were being cold
It was like
processed.
cold pressed or something.
Or
like
cold- well, it is-
cold pressed coffee.
Yeah. It was cold brew.
Cold brew circuit boards.
Yeah,
which
cold
don't
brew.
need to be isolated or contained in any way
nitrous.
because they're so cold.
You
I feel like the
you inject the NOS and then the circuit board.
that
comes faster.
entire cold design thing was just an excuse to have a
Well, they
whole
run
bunch
cold. That
of
like
liquid nitrogen in
yeah.
tanks.
And the
It's
whole
like-
point of that was to freeze somebody and use that to kill them.
the whole point of that was that Terminator 2 had come out the last summer. They talk about it as like a cold. Like the idea is that it runs instead of running hot, instead of warming, it gets colder as it runs. Was kind of like the again throwaway single line. But that's the kind of stuff in movies that I always hold on to. I'm like, I want a movie about that.
I would like to meet your scientist that is capable of creating cold from rapidly moving energy.
Yeah. Like, I guess cold fusion or whatever, which is the premise of a lot of 90s movies, too, like The Saint and all those, like, and Chain Reaction.
Yes, Chain Reaction, thank you.
Because The Saint's the way better movie about it, I think. I think The Saint's better than Chain Reaction. Saint's terrible, but it's still better than Chain Reaction. Yeah, Val Kilmer and Elizabeth Shue.
Was that The Saint?
Yeah, it was The Saint, Val
Because,
Kilmer.
yeah, Chain Reaction was
Morgan Freeman and Keanu Reeves. They were lovers.
Were they?
No. Morgan Freeman was the villain, I think. Or he's the
It would have been a more interesting film.
Or he's the mentor and he's killed early on and it's a surprise. Or he's the mentor, he's killed early on and it was faked and he was the villain. I honestly don't remember which one it was.
Which Morgan Freeman movie is this?
It's called Chain Reaction. It's about a group of scientists who invent cold fusion, and it ends with Keanu Reeves using like a snow ski to get away from a cold fusion explosion.
It's great.
It was the 90s were the eras of running away from explosions, of being able to. We saw many times in this film, and in fact, a lot of stuntmen, particularly in Hard Target, where you're like, wow, you're really bringing it. You clearly just jumped through fire.
Yeah, they definitely earned their paychecks back then. Well, that's because they didn't have the luxury of green screen.
Well, that and like it's also just a thing we don't do that much anymore. Like also, most movies are about superhero. Like most action Hollywood movies are about superpowered people. So it's like, oh, an explosion went off, and the Hulk's like, yeah.
And
in a weird way, the superpowered people, like it's coming back around. Like Captain America is now all about like intense hand-to-hand choreographed combat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're right.
Like, that's like Captain America's bread and butter. It's all about like, well, Captain America and another guy are gonna do an intense knife fight.
That was not an intense knife fight in Time Cop.
Oh, where they fought like they were swords?
Yeah, and he just kind of held it in one spot, and the
that's
other
where they
guy
was
just
going.
he held it in one spot, and then his attacker just kept slashing at that one spot with two knives.
He just kept trying to stab the knife with his knife, and
Maybe he wasn't there to kill Time Cop. He was there to kill the knife.
Wasn't it his knife?
No. I don't know. Yes.
I believe he drops
it is
the
his
knife, but he had several spares.
Well, you see, Steve, from the future, gotta go.
In the
Time Cop movies
future,
have a really
knives
hard
are a
time.
precious commodity.
In the future, the white supremacist party elects a knife who will take over the world.
a literal knife.
I really that one line still bothers me.
That stopped the room dead when they announced there was a white supremacist political party that had a political candidate that was gaining 23% of the popular vote, and I was like, holy shit. The only thing inaccurate about this is they predicted it happened in 2004. They were just 10 years too early.
There was a lot of things in this film that they were just like, yeah, it doesn't matter what you can do or
this
who
is like
you
the
are. You just need a lot of fucking money.
This is like the network of 90s action movies.
Yeah, so for a 1994 movie that takes place in the future,
2004.
involving time travel, so we're already off in that subgenre.
The distant future, the year 2004.
There
Where
were
the
a lot of
Transformers
things
take
that
place
were
too.
eerily accurate.
It's always fun, man. I will say that's like some of the best stuff. It's always eerie when they get it right.
And when they don't, you don't notice, right? But
yeah, or if you're like, oh no, like Network's a really good example where,
Yeah.
like, particularly like I've read like you can read articles about reviews of the movie Network, and critics will say this would never happen to journalism. Corporations owning multiple news media outlets and controlling the narrative, that'll never happen. And I was like, oh no, oh no, we live in 1984, don't we?
that used to be thought to be impossible. That's my reality.
Yeah, and a movie that was about that people called unrealistic.
They said the same thing about, what was it? Let's see,
Star Wars, and they were right.
Right, they were correct.
It didn't happen.
No, The Net was Sandra Bullock about
Where
somebody
she ordered pizza from pizza.com.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, everything about her life, her accounts, her information, her whole life.
Someone might know everything about you and use it against you.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would say here's where that movie missed the mark. It's unrealistic because the premise of the movie is that they take all of her data and they erase her. And that's the great terror. And I'm like, that would be such a luxury now.
Yeah. Please.
I would thank whatever Russian hacker did that. If they were like, you don't exist anymore, I'd be like, whoa! I'd be like, yeah!
No more.
What's your Bitcoin
debt.
wallet? I'm making a
I'd be like
donation.
Jean-Claude Van Damme after he hops over that truck and it explodes. And yeah! What a fresh start. What a cleansing digital fire it would be.
Yeah, that would be
love it.
fantastic. I would disappear and you would find me somewhere in Europe under an assumed name. I am Jean-Claude Van Vanderberg.
What did the movie have that erase you from the internet button? Was that
Catwoman had it. Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah,
you want the
Batman.
the clean slate, and
Clean Slate Protocol?
poor Ben Mendelsohn, Catwoman, drops him to the ground and puts her like weird blade heel into his neck, and she goes, "Where is it? Where's the drive?" And he goes, "What? You mean the clean slate? The program that you put into a computer, push one button, and you're erased from the entire world?" And basically she goes, "Yeah, that." Because he has to explain it, because it's not been set up in this film or previous Batman films that this was a thing that the construction magnate Roland Daggett was working on.
Yeah,
Or John Daggett, they changed his name.
I'm going to be honest. I kind of blocked most of that film out of my memory.
I am a big supporter of the Bane voice. I like the Bane voice. Because here's the thing, it's the only thing you're going to remember about that movie.
Huh.
And that character is now distinct in the movie.
For his iron lung voice.
Well, I think it's a nice juxtaposition, because it's an interesting way to portray strength, because really what it's saying is he's going to be this way, and he's still like the biggest, scariest thing. And he doesn't need to be threatening.
Right.
You know, like it's actually more
His voice
scarier.
doesn't need to sound imposing.
It's more scarier that it sounds like he's smiling the whole time, and he's like lilting, you know. It's the most interesting part of the movie, because I do not care about his fusion reactor. Another fusion reactor. I mean, it was better than these Van Damme movies. Again, going back to the point of the sophistication, where it's like, well, at least the Dark Knight Rises like tries to do something.
I mean, have we had any action movies?
American?
Well, no, I mean, just, well, yeah, in general, that fit this.
I haven't seen
this
them,
motif.
but the what comes to mind immediately is the old man action kind of subgenre. Your Liam Neesons and your Denzel Washingtons and your Takens and your like Denzel Washington's in the Equalizer film.
John Wick, Expendables.
Oh, John Wick.
Oh, yeah,
John Wick.
John-
I don't think of. I mean, I guess
John Wick is a very simple story.
I guess also those are old man action movies, but those are so well made, and Keanu Reeves is, I can only assume, a vampire, so he doesn't look that old.
Right.
How is it not aged a day?
Because there's a painting in his attic that's aging for him.
He's old, right? Like he's old. How much older? How much younger than Liam Neeson is Keanu Reeves? He can't be that much younger, right? Or Denzel Washington. They both. Denzel. I mean, they all came up around the same time. They were all in movies in the early '90s.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Keanu Reeves is.
Late 40s?
He's 53.
53.
How?
Why couldn't these movies have been like John Wick?
Because nobody knew how to do that yet,
Is
David.
Keanu Reeves the best American action star we have? Right now.
Actually, that's a good question.
Working right now. Is he the best American? From John Wick alone, the 3 John Wick movies, obviously his history with Speed and the Matrix trilogy. Like, is he our best American action star?
Of the past decade?
I'd say currently working, currently working, because, like...
It's either him or, I don't know, Liam Neeson.
See, I don't think those movies are good, though, and I don't think he's...
I'm not talking about just those. I'm talking his overall body of work, though.
Like the Schindler's List actions.
Yeah. I'm just talking about, like, his work as a whole.
I could have punched more.
Yeah.
Could have punched this Nazi and that Nazi and drag him into the car.
Would have been an interesting film.
He was just punching Nazis for 3 hours. Punch you. Well, what do you do at your factory, Mr. Schindler? Punch. Oh, you're a true hero, Oscar. But yeah, like I don't know about the Liam Neeson, because I think those movies are really bad because they have all that quick cutting, and I mean I think Liam Neeson's probably in great shape, but he clearly doesn't have any martial arts training. He can't do any of those things.
As an actor, he's got more chops, but
Well, yeah, but like he's not an action star, like in that sense. Like I would say, like it's like Chris Evans is obviously great as Captain America, but I wouldn't like classify Chris Evans as an action star, even though he starred in 8 action-heavy movies as Captain America, or however many there've been.
Hasn't Liam Neeson literally played the role of God in one of his movies?
He played Aslan the Lion. Jesus.
Well, that's okay.
And what about Zeus?
I mean, that's...
Oh, right, where he released that Kraken or whatever.
What happened to that guy? Yeah, the lead actor.
Oh,
in
Sam
that.
Worthington?
Yes.
Well, between that and Terminator Salvation, it was a little rough.
I mean, he's still got the Avatar sequels to fall back on, maybe.
You know, he's not bad in Avatar. I just think he's miscast. I think it's one of those things where, you know, James Cameron made him the lead in his movie, and everybody was like, well,
He must be the next
amazing.
big thing, yeah.
When in reality, he was just appropriate for the role in Avatar. He was just an actor where James Cameron was like, oh, yeah, you'll be great in my movie Avatar, playing this character I wrote. which is why Terminator Salvation. Well, not.
That was not the only reason why
I was
Terminator
about to say. I was like, actually, he's like the least of that movie's problems.
Terminator could have and should have stopped after the second or third one.
You know what? Make 7 more Terminators. Fuck it. Like,
I mean,
who
we've got one
cares?
on the way.
Make more. You know what? Never stop making Terminators.
Are we already doing that with Transformers?
That Bumblebee movie looks kind of good.
I know.
And it's from the director. Well, it's you know
It's
who
bothering me. I saw that.
You know who directed it, right? It's the director of Kubo and the Two Strings, doing his first
Oh.
live action movie.
Oh.
And that's why I was like, oh, okay, that's a great movie.
Because I saw the trailer and I was just like, I want to hate this, but
It looks kind
it
of
looks-
it looked kind of good. Right?
Yeah, I
Have
was
you
just
seen
like,
the trailer, Corey, for the Bumblebee movie.
it looks lighthearted. It looks so far removed from the
I
Michael
feel like I'm
Bay
losing
stuff.
all credibility with Corey as I keep speaking about
There's
this.
a Bumblebee movie?
Yeah, it comes out this Thanksgiving it's for families of all ages.
Why?
Yeah, it's set in the 80s
I
and
was
it's
joking when I said keep making the Transformers
Oh,
movies.
no,
I'm
we're never-
so done with them.
everything will always be made forever. We just have to accept it now. Like, you're not gonna outlive any property anymore. You know, there was a time where you probably were never gonna live and there was never gonna be another Die Hard movie. That time is over. There will always be another Die Hard movie. Now, if they're not successful, they may only come out every 5 to 10 years. But like, you are always gonna get another one of these movies. It's like when I started reading comics, somebody told me at a store, he was like, yeah, I'm gonna die with an unfinished collection of Action Comics, most likely, because it's going to keep going. And I was like, that's an interesting philosophical point, which is I'm going to get what I want out of, like, the Superman character, and he will go way beyond me. Well, that is not true of everything. There is nothing that is not true of.
That's sort of how comic books are, though.
Well, it's how movies are now.
Well,
The
that's
stories
how-
are
yeah.
cyclic. Major arcs, not the down to the nitty gritty detail, but general arcs of characters repeat themselves every so many years in comic books.
Next Die Hard movie's a prequel about his origins as a cop.
I mean, some of the first Superman comics
Because
I
we
read were from
needed
the
that.
70s, and
what?
those are still available on shelves today. So that story
I mean, you can
of
get
Superman
You can
has
get
been
Action
going
Comics
on.
#1. I mean, it's a reprint, but you can go read that story at
Yeah.
any time. I'm actually doing a Spider-Man read. I'm finally doing it. I after taking 4 years to read every X-Men book from start date up through where I started reading. I have now embarked on my Spider-Man quest. I am 50 issues in. It's interesting. We'll talk about it another day, but
Yeah. Well,
So you started from the beginning?
from the beginning, from Amazing Fantasy number 15.
enjoy your 300 issues of Dan Slott Spider.
I know, right? It's weird to think how that's going to be like a 7th of all of Spider-Man.
Yes.
How long is that going to take for you to read?
Well,
through-
X-Men took me about 4 years. And to be fair, there were more continuous X-Men books being published simultaneously for a longer period of time.
Spider-Man shouldn't take you near as long as X-Men because X-Men had so many
Yeah, there are
branching
going to be
paths.
multiple Spider-Man books at a certain point, but it happens later, and there are often fewer that don't run as long.
Okay.
So that will be easier. And also, I started reading Spider-Man at the same point, so I can actually stop I started with the Straczynski run. What I'll probably do is like reread some of the things I remember really liking about the Straczynski run.
So, did you notice what I was mentioning earlier about how some types of arcs seem to be cyclic in comic
Yeah.
books? Or
Well, they
did
always
you
come
actually-
back. They always repeat themselves in stories in some way, shape,
They
or
cycle
form.
in the sense that comics are interesting, and when it's done well, it can be really interesting. Which is like this progression of it's sort of cyclical, but still it's kind of like a wheel that's going down it's a wheel that's like getting traction every second spin.
Right.
So it like spins in place, and then it moves forward a foot, and then it spins in place, and then it moves forward a foot. So even though it's cyclical, technically speaking, there's a lot of like X-Men's a really good example where Professor X started is not where he currently is. Like he has actually, if in the sliding scale of comic book time, let's say the X-Men have been the X-Men for 10 years. They have basically, now these characters have 10 years of history to them that you can go read if you want, or what many writers do, and what I'd say the really good writers do, is it just feels like backstory in any story you'd read, which is, well, you don't need to know this, so if it comes up, it's a surprise to you. Like, they treat it like a surprise, like someone, you've read books and seen movies and TV shows where an ex-lover shows up. You didn't see their whole relationship for 10 episodes of a previous show. but you just get it from context because it's part of the story. And most writers just treat it that way, which is, yeah, they're actually now the difference is that if Wolverine's ex-lover shows up, there actually probably is like 20 issues you can go read where you actually do see how they met and how that all happened. But you don't need to. They don't write it in a way where you need to. And one of the biggest barriers is I don't think people realize that. I've noticed people are always like, well, where do I start? And I go, well, you just start. Like, I didn't...
Just pick up a book and read it. And if all of a sudden you're just like, wow, this is really interesting.
Yeah.
If you're just like, I wish I'd known more about that, go back and read that.
Well, I think that's the biggest limitation, the biggest hurdle Marvel Unlimited has, which is Marvel Unlimited is not great at telling you where to start. Marvel Unlimited doesn't give you, they do like weekly suggestions, but Marvel Unlimited, you should be able to click on Spider-Man as a character, and you should see, like, it should be divided out in, like, would you like to read the original Stan Lee Steve Ditko run? Would you like to, and they just summarize it, Peter Parker goes from high school student to college student, and all of his big villains are introduced. Oh, okay, I understand what that is now.
Like, I want to know more about this Pulp Venom thing. Well, cool. Here's the
yeah.
Venom saga right here.
Yeah, hey, click on Venom. Okay, well, Venom has, and it could even say, hey, Venom's been, the symbiote's been a bunch of people. Here's the reading order, and like you click on it, and here's all the issues with Eddie Brock. Here's all the issues with Flash. Here's all the issues with Boom, and they appeared in this order. And you can start anywhere. Websites do. There are websites that do that. There's an excellent website called Crushing Crisis. It's the website I use for the X-Men run. It's the website I'm using for the Spider-Man run, where it will tell you how to read feeds. It will even tell you based on what you're reading. Like, oh, did you buy the essential trades? Okay, well, here's what else you might need. Or did you buy X? Okay, well, then this is what you'll need. It's an excellent tool. I know we've gotten off topic from Jean-Claude Van Damme.
No, I mean, we're way off topic.
I think Jean-Claude Van Damme speaks for himself. You just can't understand him when he does.
Well, too long didn't watch. You're not missing anything.
I don't think so. I would say watch Street Fighter. I would say if you're interested in Jean-Claude Van Damme, watch Street Fighter, and you go, hey, for the 3 minutes in that movie, that was kind of fun. And just know that if you wanted, that the full version of it's not that fun.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Any one of these movies would have been way better if Chun-Li showed up, if Ming-Na showed up as Chun-Li. Or if Raw Julia was always Van Damme's villain, instant A- to all these movies. If Raw Julia was the villain in all three of these, I would love all three of these movies.
I think you just missed Raw Julia.
I do. My God.
It's not that I didn't have fun watching these movies. I just don't think I could ever watch them again. I don't think I would ever have a reason.
I could see watching Hard Target again in a few years. It'd have to be a while where I forgot it. I could see it going with a couple of other like-minded action movies. Actually, a really good John Woo trilogy of like fun schlock movies is you watch Hard Target, you watch Broken Arrow, and you watch Face Off. That's a real fun trilogy of schlocky action movies. Face Off is it's terrible, but it's so fun to watch. Guys, we should have watched Face Off.
Yeah, we should have watched Face Off.
Well,
we should do a remake of Face Off with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Absolutely not. Yes, but he can play the brother. He can't play either of the leads. He can't play Castor Troy, or I don't remember John Travolta's character's name. Sean Archer.
There you go.
Agent Sean Archer. Boy, I remember Face Off.
As long as the editors remember to, in post, speed up his voice by 1.5 times.
Yeah.
We don't know if that'll work with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
We should have tested this. I should have busted out a PS3 or something. I guess we were not sold on Jean-Claude Van Damme, sadly. And ultimately, though we were, I would say personally, I was reminded of the glory that was the terrible John Woo American action film of the 90s. Corey, were you sold on Jean-Claude Van Damme?
Maybe if I was really bored, I would recommend it to somebody.
You seemed bored today watching them.
That's not untrue. But it wasn't like I wasn't having any fun. They were action movies. So it's not like I'm saying these were 0 out of 10 movies.
They were action films.
They were action films.
This was, in fact, a film. I did watch it.
There was gunfire. There were a lot of roundhouse kicks.
So many. It really didn't disappoint.
It got old.
It did. It really did. He was doing him at the end of Time Cop, and I was like,
I'm not going to lie. The first time I saw the roundhouse kick on screen, I thought, oh, cool. He could do that. And then maybe 30 minutes later, I was thinking,
why is he doing that?
Roundhouse kicking.
You start to question how effective it would be. You're like, that'd be effective.
Can you do anything else? Okay, I know that. You showed me 50 times in the first 15 minutes. You can do a crazy split and a roundhouse kick. But do you have any other moves? Answer, not really.
Steve, did you sell yourself on Jean-Claude Van Damme? Or are you done with the muscles from Brussels?
Sadly, I think I'm done. I don't know. The ruby glasses were strong. We're strong
Ruby
here.
quartz glasses keeping your psychoptic blasts away.
Yes. I definitely enjoyed them when I was a child, but it's definitely one of those things that should have stayed in my childhood, because when you watch them when you're an adult, you start to see the cracks.
Yeah, yeah, they were proverbially taped together films. But that's okay. I had an enjoyable time. But yes, I will not be seeking out any more Jean-Claude Van Damme movies.
Yeah.
I reserve the right to rewatch Street Fighter while completely drunk.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's a good drinking film.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful drinking film.
Not really a Van Damme film.
We knew, since we had already watched it previously, we knew enough about it to know that while Van Damme is billed as the topless star in it, it's an ensemble cast.
It's like saying Schwartz. It's like saying Batman and Robin's a Schwarzenegger film. Not really the case, sadly. He would have been a great Batman. No, he wouldn't have.
No, that was
all. The fuck am I talking about? He was a terrible Batman. Although I would say, given who was Batman at the time, he would have been a better Batman.
I mean, he certainly couldn't have been worse.
No disrespect to George Clooney, who's from all accounts a lovely, charitable man, and an excellent actor and director and many other things. But I think Schwarzenegger could have literally acted circles around him as Batman.
Does George Clooney have something on you?
That's not the time. I'll sell you all on George Clooney another day.
Okay.
I'm David.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Corey.
Bye, everybody.
You've been listening to Cattywampus. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr at CattyWampusPod. Email us at cattywampuspodcast@gmail.com. Music by Tilly.